Nati Team Zenzino. So yesterday we talked a little bit about the big picture. Why do we need to improve our health with Zenzino products? Today I'm going to talk very quickly about our major products and how they fit together, why they've been designed in the way that they have been. So, the products. I showed you this slide yesterday. And I talked about the fact that behind all of the foods that are sold to us in the stores, in the supermarkets, there's only a very small number of companies. And they control this large universe. And I also talked about the fact that behind them, there's a very small number of companies and individuals who really control the world economy. And two people asked me after the lecture who these companies were. And we don't need to know that. Here. These are the companies. These companies are all cross-linked. The members of the boards of directors on one of those companies sit on all the others. This group of companies controls 82% of the world's economy. They create the world that we live in. These are the companies that dominate our lives. What you eat, what you wear, how you work, how you travel, how your children are educated. These are the people who own your politicians, and mine. And they have created an environment for us which is good for them, but for us, it's terrible. For the reasons I explained yesterday, it makes us sick, it makes us fat, and it leaves us starving. It leaves us with malnutrition. And that malnutrition causes chronic inflammation, which drives aging. It drives all of the major diseases of our time. We're being poisoned slowly, day by day, because of this constructed world that has been made for us to live in. And the doctors don't understand this because they all look at a little bit of the problem. Yesterday I used the metaphor of the islands. This is simply another way of saying the same thing. When I was at medical school, the oncologists don't really talk to the cardiologists. They don't talk to the neurogeriatricians. And nobody talks to the osteopaths and the pods. We all sit in our little silos, working in our little specialities, and very few people stand up and look over the tops of the cubicles and see what the other people are doing. And I was one of the first people to do that because I was a pharmacologist, a clinical pharmacologist, and not a clinician. I have the room and the space to do this. And as you know, for many, many years, I was really ignored by the medical profession. But now I've come home, I've been invited to come home to the heart of medical research. And gradually, the medical scientists are beginning to understand how important the work is that we are doing. Not just the nutrition industry, but Zenzino. I get requests from universities all over the world to talk to them, to work with them. And in those research projects, we are going to be using Zenzino products. I'm not selling it. I'm not a salesman. Other people are beginning to understand what we're doing. They see it's important, they see that it works, and they want to work with us. So, here we are. We're talking about switching off the inflammasome, which has two halves. The top half is all about the different types of fats that you eat. And there, the 6:3 ratio, which you measure in the balance test, is very, very important. And that leads to, if you have the wrong ratio, you will have the breakdown of these cellular structures called lysosomes, leading to the release of the matrix metalloproteases. That's where the polyphenols come in, from olive. Those are the ones that we use. This is the matrix in a leaf. This is the matrix inside a human being. And this is what happens when those enzymes are released very quickly. It destroys everything, and when they are released slowly, they gradually damage and corrode tissues, wherever they are released, whether it's cartilage or bone or artery or brain cell. This is the key to treating the so-called diseases of civilization. And we have that key, ladies and gentlemen. We have the first key that operates in that lock. We used to eat a lot of polyphenols, they've been taken out of the modern processed diet. We used to have the right 6-to-3 ratio, but the 3s have been removed and replaced with 6s. And so we have all become very vulnerable to chronic inflammation. As we've become more saturated with omega-6s, we have all been left in a state of chronic inflammation. That is what fills the hospitals. That is what fills the cemeteries. That is why you expect your parents to have heart disease and cancer and Alzheimer's. These problems are so easily avoided. These are the problems that steal our best years, that take away time we should have had to spend with our parents, or as we get older, the time that we should have had to spend with our children and our grandchildren. And that is what our products is designed to give back to you. So, here we start with putting out the fire with omega-3s and polyphenols. There is no drug that can do this. Only these natural products can, and only when they're combined in the right way. Many, many years of research went into developing this combination. And in all the years that I've spent studying pharmacology, this is the single most powerful, most effective, most useful, most life-changing therapeutic intervention I have ever seen. I don't think you understand yet what you have in your hands. You have something that is more powerful than anything the pharmaceutical industry has produced yet, more powerful than anything the doctor can prescribe for you or for your family. We have the key. We have the key to a large part of degenerative disease. We don't just have the fish oil. We know people ask us about that, but it just doesn't work because fish don't make fish oil. That comes from the seaweed. And so it's only when you combine the two active constituents that are in the Inuit diet, both the fatty acids and the polyphenols, these very special polyphenols, that's when you end up with this situation where krill oil, which I understand is quite fashionable these days, but believe me, it's junk. It oxidizes so quickly that by the time it leaves your stomach, most of it is already oxidized. If they add omega-3s and vitamin E, if you were to make the mistake of adding that, taking that at a mealtime, and you have also eaten meat or fish in that same meal, compounds that are present in the meat and the fish turn the vitamin E into a pro-oxidant. Now the vitamin E in that product will actually oxidize the oils more quickly. It leaves them unprotected. It turns them into something toxic. I would not recommend that. These are the only compounds that ensure that the omega-3s can do what we want them to do. So the first step in this sequence, when you see someone with problems, put out the fire. Test, verify. If they have a bad 6-to-3 ratio, and if they eat a modern diet, they do, that is the rationale for prescribing or recommending balance. Whether it's the oil or the balanced shake or the capsules, it makes no difference. And then the second thing we have to do is to replenish. I talked yesterday about malnutrition, how common that is, because those modern processed foods are full of calories and omega-6s and salt and sugar because that's cheap, but not very much nutrition. And so people end up starved. On the surface, they have enough calories, maybe too many. Inside, they are low. They are depleted in almost everything. So we have to put that back. Notice that we do it in this order. If you're inflamed, if you have chronic inflammation, there isn't so much point in taking micronutrients because they can't do their job properly. First, we have to put out the fire. So balance comes first, and then we can start to treat this problem of dysnutrition. How important is dysnutrition? It has now been agreed by senior personnel in the medical industry that poor nutrition is the single most important cause of early death all over the world. And this was published just last year. This is now a medical consensus. That's how important this is. That's how disastrous the modern processed food diet is. Once we've put out the flames, then we can give you, in extender, what you need for your body to start to heal, to start to grow healthy new tissue, to replace the tissue that was damaged. And that's where Extend comes in. And it contains in 4 tabs, and it's very important that you take 4 tablets a day. That is the correct dose. 2 is not enough. 6 is unnecessary. If you take 4 tablets a day, and you should take them with meals, and you should not take them all at once, 2 with breakfast, 1 with lunch, 1 with dinner, or 2 at breakfast and 2 at dinner. Split them up, divide them. They work better that way. It contains all this. And this just looks like an ordinary vitamin and mineral tablet, but then we add a whole lot of other things into those 4 tablets, including vitamin D3 and vitamin K2, very, very important, not just to maintain healthy bones, but also to prevent the calcification of soft tissue. If you are interested, you can go to PubMed or Google Scholar, go to those very specialized websites and do your own research. There are so many papers now that tell us exactly what these compounds will do and exactly how important they are. Then we added some of the more of the essential trace elements, some of the key phytonutrients. Beta-carotene, you know. Alpha-carotene is not as common, but it seems to be much more effective in vitro tests at killing a wide range of cancer cells. Zeaxanthin and lutein, which are very important compounds, they're essential for the health of the retina. If your diet is low in those compounds, part of the retina called the macula densa becomes degraded, and you become highly vulnerable to retinopathies of various sorts. Lycopene, which is the compound in tomatoes, the red pigment. There is evidence that this is cardioprotective, evidence also that it is extremely effective in killing off a wide range of cancer cells. And that has been shown not just in vitro studies, but in some preliminary clinical studies as well. Finally, coenzyme Q10, not a very large dose. Some people say you should take more. Actually, you don't need to, because if you have all the other nutrients, most are very good at making their own Q10. So the truth is, we just put Q10 in there to make it look good, because people want to see it. But with everything else there, you make your own. Then there is Wellmune. This is a compound, this is probably one of the most researched nutrients of all time. I chaired the scientific advisory board for Biothera. We spent over $350 million researching this one molecule. And it is the most effective way of improving the functioning of the innate immune system that exists. This not only increases your resistance to infection, but it also changes the adaptive immune system in a way that makes you less vulnerable to allergy. And in fact, we think the reason why there is so much allergy today is because these compounds, which used to be in our food supply, have been taken away. So what we're doing is, here we're putting them back. Then a whole bunch of other phytonutrients. And some of these, I'm sure you know, the curcuminoids, the top 3, the top 4, these are water-soluble polyphenols, powerful anti-inflammatory agents. And then the fluorotenins and oleuropein, you've got your olive polyphenols there. These are the lipid-soluble polyphenols. And together, the different types of polyphenols provide a kind of umbrella which protects different parts of the body, different tissues from chronic inflammation. Then we added apple seed extract, which is called rhodonide. And most of you probably know what this is. Just to refresh your memory, this is another word for cyanide. You probably think of cyanide as a poison. Well, yes, it is, if you take enough. But in very small amounts, it's essential. This is also an essential nutrient for the immune system, which is why Extend is very effective in reducing your risk of infection. How do Balance Oil and Extend work together? Well, you have to remember that all tissues are dynamic. Living tissues are dynamic. They're constantly being broken down and replaced. Every time, for example, I take a step and put weight onto this foot, I load up the joints. The cartilage plates in the knee are compressed, and as they compress, the very delicate capillaries that supply the cartilage plates are obliterated, they're blocked. And just for a moment, that tissue is starved of oxygen. Then when I take the load off my foot, the blood flow returns, and this creates what we call reperfusion injury. It releases a small amount of free radicals, leads to a small amount of damage. But that's okay, because if you're healthy, you're making new cartilage all the time. So some is destroyed and some is replaced. If you lose 10 units a day and replace 10 units a day, the cartilage never gets any thinner. You never have a problem with arthritis. But the problem is, if you're starving, if you're eating a modern diet, if you're full of chronic inflammation, the mathematics goes wrong. So this is a cartoon which shows the amount of cartilage in a joint. Let's say it's a knee joint. You're constantly adding to this. Let's see if I can do this. It's constantly being broken down, and it's constantly being replaced. And if those processes are in balance, the joint will stay healthy. But if you have chronic inflammation, then the hole in the bottom of the bucket gets larger. Now you're losing much more cartilage, much more rapidly. Now you're still gaining 10 units, but you're losing 20. So every day you lose 20 units of cartilage, and the cartilage slowly gets thinner and thinner and thinner. Now you don't yet have symptoms because there's a lot of cartilage in the joint, but gradually, over time, it gets thinner, and eventually it gets to the point where it causes symptoms. Now that process of gradual erosion of cartilage may take 20 years. So by the time 20 years has passed, you've lost a great deal of cartilage, but that's when the pain starts. That's when you go to see the doctor. The doctor gives you a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug which relieves the pain but may well kill you. We kill a lot of our patients. And the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are extremely problematic in that respect. They are a common cause of death. The doctor only ever becomes involved very, very late in the disease. He is like a fire engine that comes to the scene of the fire when the house has already burnt almost to the ground. You can do much better than that. You can stop this problem before it becomes serious, because what you can do is switch off the chronic inflammation. When you do that, you close up the hole that's in the bottom of the bucket. And now instead of losing 10 units a day and losing 20, you're still putting in 10 new units a day, but you're only losing 10. Now you can stabilize the joint. And this is where extender comes in. Now we add all the cofactors that the body needs to make new cartilage. So now we're only using 10 units a day and we're replacing 20. Now the cartilage can start to heal and regrow. Now we're turning the arrow of time backwards. Now what we are offering is new joints for old, reversing the aging process as it affects cartilage. And actually, it's quite trivial. I've seen so much of this. It no longer excites me. Doctors find this absolutely amazing when I first talk about it to them, and then they get it. See, if all you have is drugs to treat the symptoms, all they ever see is the problem getting worse. So they think, oh, that's how it is. It always gets worse. That's why they call these diseases degenerative. They assume that they will always get worse because they don't have the tools to put it right. How arrogant of them. How stupid. We're approaching this from a very different perspective. We're looking at this from the point of view of the economics of cartilage, of the vitality of cartilage, of the fact that it is a living tissue, not a static target, as the doctors would have you believe. Same thing is true for coronary artery disease. So here you have a coronary artery, or it could be an artery anywhere in the body, and if you eat a Western processed diet and live a Western processed lifestyle, then you will have fatty streaks in the lining of the artery. Now, atheroma is constantly forming in the linings of the artery, and it is constantly being removed. Atheroma is also a dynamic tissue. And if the rate of formation is matched by the rate of removal, the atheroma never grows. This is what we see, for example, in the blue zones that I told you about yesterday. People don't have more hypertension or more heart disease as they get older. But the problem is, the Western processed diet takes away these compounds. So you have more inflammation in the linings of the arteries. And it gives us compounds like this, which cause more atheroma. So now, instead of producing 10 units of atheroma and removing 10 units, now you're producing 20 units and you're only replacing 5. So every day the atheroma grows by 15 units. And gradually, over a period of decades, it grows and grows and grows until you have your first heart attack. Now we know that it's very easy to make atheroma shrink. I've seen this in so many cases. There are different ways of doing it. Some people use drugs to achieve this, or you can do plasmapheretic work if you want, but that's very expensive. It has risks. We have a way of doing it that is cheap and safe. It is safe, ladies and gentlemen, and that's really, really important. All we have to do is to increase the amounts of omega-3s and polyphenols, and that's where balance comes in. That stops the chronic inflammation. And ideally, we should also tell people, stop smoking and improve your diet. That's always a part of what we should do. And now we bring the process back into positive balance. Now we're only depositing 5 units of atheroma a day, but we're removing 15. So every day we lose 10 units of atheroma. These are arbitrary units. You couldn't even measure it under a microscope. But every day you're losing a little, a little, a little, a little more. And what I see is, over a period of 6 months, the atheroma in people's arteries melts, like the snows in spring. Another medical miracle, if all you know is pharmaceutical medicine. From our perspective, from the perspective of the great French scientist Claude Bernard, in whose shadow I stand, it is no miracle at all. It is simple logic. So that is why we've added Extender to Balance. Balance is an important part of the story, and it is the first step. Extender is the second step, so get healthy before it's too late. You have plenty of time. For people who have symptoms, there the position is clear. For people who don't yet have symptoms, all that means is you're sick, but you don't yet know it. Because if you live a Western lifestyle, you already are losing the cartilage in your joints. It's not yet hurting you because you're only at the beginning of your disease. You already have fatty streaks in the linings of your arteries. You don't have angina yet because it's too early, but you're going in that direction. And we know this because when we cut open the bodies of people who die of road traffic accidents in their 30s or 20s or their teens, we can see these changes are already starting. So for people who are not in balance and who are not taking Extender, we know they already have these problems. Even if they think they're well, they're not. They are just sick, but they do not yet know it. What are the warning signs of someone who has chronic inflammation? Well, they tend to have raised blood pressure, because when you have chronic inflammation in the arteries, they start to constrict. Other signs include varicose veins, gingivitis, depression. There's a whole range of other symptoms, all of which you can trace back to chronic inflammation. Eat a better diet and take your balance oil. And then what next? 3, make your immune system work better. Well, we've already done that, because the compounds that you need to make your immune system work better, not just the beta-glucans, not just the cyanogens, but the iodine and the iron and the zinc and everything else that the immune system needs are all already in Extend. You've done that. Step 4, improve your physique, if you want. If you want to be slim and beautiful. Well, how do we do that? This is what Lean Shake was designed to do. And this is a very sophisticated product because it is designed not only to feed you and to reduce your appetite, but it is also designed to rectify the microbiome. Now, the microbiome, the microbes in your gut, can also be a very important source of chronic inflammation if you eat a Western low-fiber diet. So what we have done is to add to Lean Shake a very interesting blend of microfibers, of these prebiotics that transform the microbiome throughout the length of the gastrointestinal tract. And they're derived from these types of foods. Some people take probiotics. Frankly, there's not much point in taking probiotics, because a probiotic capsule, or even a yogurt, only contains a very few of the right types of microbes. And when you eat that, you're taking these raw recruits straight out of military college, and you're sending them into the equivalent of a civil war, where there is hand-to-hand fighting. All the different microbes in your gastrointestinal tract are competing with each other for fuel, for space. And they use different tools to do that. Some of them produce toxins which kill the other microbes. They're at each other's throats. So when you send in probiotics which have simply been bred in stainless steel vats in the laboratories of Nestle or the other companies who make these things, they have a hard time of it. Many of them don't even survive transit through the stomach. Many of the other products currently on sale, what we know is, based on recent work at one of the London universities, is that the lyophilized bacteria that you find in capsules or tablets are stunned by the lyophilization, which is what we do when we make tablets. They're stunned, they are knocked unconscious. And it may take 36 or 48 hours for those microbes to become active again. And by that time, they've passed all the way through. So they cannot be effective at all. So what we have here are a blend of probiotics that feed the right bacteria and gradually change the balance of the microbes in the gastrointestinal tract from negative, gram-negative, which is pro-inflammatory, to gram-positive. And as this switch occurs, these microbes produce compounds such as butyrate, propionic acid, acetic acid. And these help to reduce the appetite, and they have anti-inflammatory effects in the gastrointestinal tract. They calm it down. And butyrate in particular, as you will see for yourselves if you go online, is extremely good at killing a whole range of cancer cells. It's a very, very interesting molecule. So we use phos to light the fuse. It starts the shift in the bacterial populations. It doesn't last long. It burns very quickly. So then we add inulin, which is a slower burning molecule that continues this shift, this transformation of the ecology of the gut. And as that begins to be consumed, the process is taken over by 1,3,1,4 beta-glucans, which we derive from the cell walls of different cereal and from oats, for example. Finally, the resistant starches take over. So now we are transforming the ecology of the entire gastrointestinal tract in a way that is associated with a whole range of health benefits, including reduction in cholesterol, for those people who think that that's important, a reduction in chronic inflammation, and in many other of the more serious health problems that we are concerned with today. So this is a group of products which are designed to overlap, to be taken together as part of a complete and healthy lifestyle package. There are some companies who are more interested in making money than in helping people to achieve good health. Companies, I won't name any names, such as Herbalife, who have a portfolio with many, many, many different products. And when I look at the formulations that they use, it is clear to me that most of them cannot do anything at all. They are so badly designed, really badly designed. You don't need that much. You only need a very small number of healthcare products which, if they're properly designed, will do all the heavy lifting for you. And based on my own studies in the Blue Zone and in the work of many other good scientists who've looked at these databases, as I showed you yesterday, it looks as if we can reduce the burden of chronic disease, chronic degenerative disease, by as much as 90%. Why do I do this? Why do I work with Enzino? That I will keep for my last presentation. Thank you.